Hi, thank you for joining me. My name is Lucia Sheehan, and I'm with Violence Free Living. I am the executive director and the founder of Violence Free Living, and we decided to put this on air online, I guess I should say, because we just want more people to have access to it. We want more people to be able to understand what we do. If you are working in a field, although it's for personal and private people, if you're working in any kind of the fields with churches, the medical community, resource centers, reentry facilities, you might look at this and say, hey, you know a lot of people who would like to take this or could benefit from this. It amazes me that how many people do enjoy it after they take it and understand more about what abuse is. Um, the other thing, there is a pre and post test. We would really appreciate if you could take the pre and the post test, because that's one is how we helps us get grants in the future and donations. But two, again, I'm always so surprised by people coming up to me and saying once they took the pre-test, thinking that they knew everything that was going on, that they thought they had a good handle on abuse and violence or manipulation, only to discover that they got several questions wrong, and they were pretty surprised about that. So we're going to go ahead and go through everything. We're going to have 5 sessions. The first session is going to be about what is abuse. The second session is going to be how learned beliefs and behaviors, the effects and choices that we make, how all that we're taught. Just because you're taught one way doesn't make it the right way. The third one, we're going to do the side effects of abuse and violence. And then the fourth one, we're going to talk about relationships, manipulation, control, and grief. And then the fifth one, we're going to talk about personal boundaries and nonviolent communication. If you have any questions or to get the pre and post test, please visit us at the website below, www.violencefreeliving.org. We would really appreciate it. And although it's not live, we certainly welcome any question that you have, and we promise we will get back with an answer to every question or get in touch with you if you want to talk further. So, our mission statement. Our mission statement is to reduce violence through educational experience that empower individuals to make positive choices and strengthen their relationship. Basically, what we're about is choose forward. Quit looking in the past, just keep going forward. Choose forward constantly. Our objectives for the class: 1, to create a safe environment for everyone to speak out of against abuse and violence. 2, to explore changes in behavior leading to happier, healthier relationships. 3, to help you understand that every behavior involves a choice, and that there are other wiser choices available other than abuse. The next one is to provide the strength and tools to start your healing process. If you choose, this is all about your choices and how you want to progress in your life. And the next one is helping others to seek their fullest potential. That's one of the most important ones for me, because I know through my own experience that sometimes we believe stories in our own heads or what other people tell us, and we don't think we have potential. I'm sure that everyone looking at this video, everyone that is visiting us in any of these videos, has a ton of potential. They just haven't been able to tap into it. And this class is going to help you understand how much potential you really have and to be able to tap into that potential. And then the bottom line, the most important part of this whole class is to be aware of your own behavior. Nothing is going to change until you look at your own behavior and you start addressing that behavior and not blame others for the way you choose or make choices. This program is also going to teach you that no one can make you be violent. Violent is not a choice. Violent is always a choice, just like anything else. There's those few rare occasions that you might be running or you might have to stand and protect your life, but that's still a choice. And overall, violence is not a choice. No one can make you be violent. For this class and for the purposes of most of the things we're talking about, you don't just wake up one day and say, oh, I think I'm going to be violent today, or I think I'm going to abuse today, or I think I'm going to hurt somebody today. Or nor do you wake up one day and say, you know what, I think I'm going to be a victim today. I think I'm going to be weak today. I think I'm going to have no self-esteem today. That happens over time. And no one can make you be violent. You choose to be violent. You choose to be abusive. And that's what this class is about. Violence is always about power and control. It will always be about power and control and nothing else. And again, thank you for joining me today, because it's not easy looking at ourselves. It's not easy being responsible, looking at our beliefs, looking at our patterns, looking at our behaviors, but it is worth the time and the energy and the pain going through it, because there's going to be some pain. When we go through this and when you start looking at your life and why you make the choices you make, you're going to have to go to your past, and there's going to be some pains there. And it's going to be hard to dig up. And once you do dig them up, you're going to have to deal with them. And through this class, we're going to show you how to deal with that. But one way right now that I can share with you is writing. Writing is so therapeutic. Please write down. You can write if you're angry. You can write if you're happy. You can write if you're bitter. You can write if you've got resentment towards someone. Nobody has to read it. It's just a matter of getting it out of here and writing it down on paper. Because once it's out of here and you write it down, the professionals say that it loosens your mind. It makes you feel lighter. You've dealt with it, kind of that kind of a feeling. Looking at what we've got buried so deep, what I was just talking about, is not easy to do. So I admire you for coming in and doing that. We need to look at the stories of our past. We need to look at the stories that others have told us that we don't even remember. We need to understand who we are and why we make those choices and why we butt into those stories from our past. And if we're violent or if we're angry or if we're really abusive to people, we probably know on some level that it's not right. But maybe it's just the way you were taught, because violence is a taught behavior. Abusiveness is a taught behavior. So maybe it's just the way you were taught. Changing our behavior and eliminating violence in your life, as long as you go processing going back through many years, that's going to help you understand the pattern of all your choices. That's going to help you understand why you make those same patterns, same choices all the time. It's going to help you understand why you do that. You might try to ignore it or downplay it. Most of us have all of our life. I know I have many times with my stuff that I have had to deal with. But then once you start getting into it, once you start looking at it, then you start seeing the bigger picture. Then you start understanding. And with understanding comes awe, and understanding comes self-esteem. And then you just keep going forward from there. It's not easy being accountable, but we cannot see what we're doing unless others make us accountable, or we make ourselves accountable for what we do and quit blaming others for our choices. I'd like to share my story with you now. When I was 11 years old, I was raped by my brother-in-law. It was very devastating. It turned my life around. I was confused. I was lonely. I was hurting. I didn't know what was going on. He threatened me, so I didn't tell anybody in my family. I became isolated, quiet within myself. I shut down. There was a part of me that died that day. And then when I became a teen, I did just the opposite. I started partying. I became very promiscuous. I would get drunk. I started getting into drinking and drugs. I would get drunk or high, and I grew up on the Near East Side, and I would walk down the middle of 10th Street. I'd walk and put my hands out, drunk, just praying that somebody would hit me and take me out of my pain and my misery. It would be 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I just felt so isolated and alone. And then in high school, I was hanging with some people, and one of the guys got raided. And the next day when I went to school, everybody kind of shunned me. Several people kind of ignored me, asked me, and I asked them what was wrong. They blamed me. And they were very cold, mean to me. And when they found out that it wasn't me, they assumed it was me because my father was a police officer. When they found out that it wasn't me, and they found out who really did turn them in, do you think any of them changed the way they treated me? No, not at all. I learned later through therapy that was their issues, not my issues. Then when I got out of high school, I've been in 3 abusive marriages, many abusive relationships. Some I didn't even classify as abuse because I just thought that's all I deserved. But I've been in 3 abusive marriages, and I did get a job. I was on the Marion County Sheriff's Department for a little while. And then one day I got home from work, and it wasn't very long after that, I received a certified letter. On that certified letter, it said, as of immediately, you are terminated. Now, I had a small child. I had an infant with me, and I was a single mom at this time. And to make a long story short, the reason why that happened, it was politics. To get to my father, they came through me. That's why I got the letter. Because my record was great, so it wasn't my record. So to get to my father, they came through me. But I remember receiving that letter as if it was yesterday. I remember that it knocked the wind out of me. I fell back on the couch, and tears were just streaming down my eyes. I thought anybody would be better off raising my son than I did. I would be. I remember thinking I was trash. At one point in time, I needed a ladder just to get up to the gutter. I remember going into my bedroom. It was so surreal. I remember going into my bedroom. I remember getting my 357 and going into the bathroom. I took that 357, I looked in the mirror, and I put it to my head. I cocked the trigger. The only thing that saved me that day, the only thing that saved me that day was that little girl who got raped. She looked back at me in that mirror and she said, "Don't let him win. Don't let him know they got to you." I said, "You're absolutely right." So I put my gun down. I went outside. My son and I lived in an apartment complex, and the swing sets were right there next to us. So I went outside to swing. And as I was screaming, I was cussing. I didn't know what you want to do with my life. I was throwing it up to the universe. Um, and as I started swinging, I heard this voice. It was very soft, but I heard this voice, and it said, "Let go, Lucia." And I kind of looked around. I thought, what's going on? I wasn't drinking or doing drugs at this time. So I just kind of blew it off. And so I started swinging again, and I heard the voice the second time. And the second time I heard the voice, the only way I can identify that, it was like a warm hug came over me. And all my tension, all my anger, just, it didn't go away, but it released. And I didn't know how, when, or where, but I knew I was going to be okay. I knew that there was something that was protecting me. And I would like to say at this time, too, that I use the word universe because I don't want to offend anybody's religion, so you can put in there whoever you want. So I knew that the universe was going to take care of me. I have total trust in the universe. I did get a good job. I worked at Allison Transmission for 32 years. And but again, I put myself right into a very violent situation, a very toxic situation. I was a supervisor on the floor, and a lot of those men did not want a female on the floor. I won't go into all the details of things that happened to me, things that were said to me, but it was on a daily basis. The abuse that I took was on a daily basis. When I retired from Allison Transmission, which was in 2009, I decided to do something about this hole that was in me. I wanted to do something totally different than what I've ever done. I have lived my entire life with this energy inside of me that was burning, with this big hole that I didn't know where this hole was coming from. So I started addressing my life more and more. So I moved to Cartagena, Colombia, and I taught English for a year. Totally got away from everybody, got away from everything. I've always been a journaler. I've always written things. So since I started dealing with my abuse, I've always written things. So as I was down there, I was writing, and that's how this program got started, because it dawned on me when I was down there, our society sees statistically the females as the victim and the men as the perpetrator. I've used many programs. They have all these programs for the victim. We need to get you healthy. We need to have you learn how to do your checking account, how to run a family, how to parent better, how to get a job, how to apply for a job, how to do a resume, all these programs for victims. And they're great. I used many of them to help me turn my life around and get things straight. But while I was down on there, it dawned on me that also our society sees the men as the perpetrator, statistically, as the perpetrator. And they do something wrong, and we throw them in jail or prison and just tell them that they're bad. Then they get released, they repeat the behavior, and then we throw them back in prison. If we only look at one side of this equation, if we only look at one piece of this puzzle, nothing's ever going to get fixed in this society. It's not a woman's issue. It's total. We have to bring both the perpetrator and the victim and help them both heal, because neither one's thinking with a healthy mind. And we have to help both of them to heal, so that hopefully some of these relationships that are splitting up will come back together as a healthy relationship. And they're going to start teaching the next generation of children how to be healthy, how to make healthy choices, how to do something other than violence. And they're going to start changing this cycle of abuse, this cycle of violence, because it is a taught behavior. It has always been a taught behavior. You live what you learn, and just because you're taught one thing doesn't make it the right way. Also in this class, we look at things holistically, because you can't be healthy in one area of your life without being healthy in all areas of your life. I also want to point out just a little bit why men don't come forward. Men don't come forward in our society because they're viewed as sissies, they're viewed as weak. In our society, men have to be strong and hold that strength all the time, not allowed to feel any emotion. They have to put that front on no matter what happens to them. And that includes boys. And I am so thankful for the men in the prisons. I've worked with about 4,000 men now, men, mostly men, probably 3,800 men and a few hundred women. But I commend the men in prison who have stood up for the first time and talked about their abuse. I would have never dreamed how many young boys are sexually abused in our society. Unfortunately, in our society, when a little girl comes forward, we all want to protect her. We all want to make sure she's okay. When a little boy comes forward, a lot of the times, he doesn't get that same reaction. What he gets is kudos, way to go, yay, now you're a man, aren't you lucky? Which is so sad because he goes through the same hurt, the same pain, the same confusion, the same anger. And yet he's crawling out for help and nobody's there to help him. So where does he put that? He buries it deep, and he's got to bury it really deep. So as we bury these things deep, we think that we've dealt with them, but I know from firsthand, we don't. They're going to come out somehow. They're going to come out through low self-esteem, through anger, through hate, through violence. They're going to come out. And every time that something happens in our life that we can't deal with, we don't know how to deal with, or we don't know where to go to deal with it, we just bury it deep. And that's one of the things this class is going to help you do. No matter how deep you've buried it, we're going to help you to start unearth some of that pain and start being able to breathe and be able to understand who you really are, not what has happened to you. The one main objective is looking at our behavior for this class. We don't judge anybody. We don't ever judge anybody. I don't care what your past is like. I don't care what you've done. I don't care what's happened. I don't care about your past. Your past is your past, and you're never going to change anything. What I care about is your future and where you're going and how beautiful you are and how much potential you have. Our past doesn't get to go first. And so many times in life, we put our past first. Before we make a choice, we look at what we've done in the past and then we choose on that. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. Our past doesn't get to go first. So we don't judge anybody in this class. It's about looking forward. Okay, now that you've heard my story, now you understand a little bit more why I started the program and how it's helped me. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about abuse. What is abuse? It's to use wrongly or improperly, to hurt or injure by maltreatment, to assault with coarse and insulting words, to deceive or trick someone, to exploit, to be used by, to do an injustice, or to expose, to badmouth, bashing someone, belittling, berating, putting down, rag on, rip up, scold, sling mud, trash. We can go on and on and on. The thing I want you to look at is look at all these ways to abuse. And we do it so easily in our life on a daily basis without even thinking about it. Anytime someone says no and you continue, that's abuse. That's abuse. I know that I used to have an ex-husband who would think it was funny if we came home at different times, if we had to go away and came home at different times, and it'd be in the evening. He used to think it was hilarious to hide behind a piece of furniture or hide in a closet or wherever, and then, or in the bathtub. And then at the least unexpected moment, he would jump out and grab me, and it would scare me. And I hated that. And I used to tell him all the time, please stop doing that. He thought it was hilarious and never did stop. That's abuse. He doesn't have to know why I wanted to stop. You just need to stop when someone says stop. Same thing with tickling somebody. I've heard so many people say, yeah, I remember my dad, my mom, my siblings, somebody tickled me and I kept telling them stop, stop, and I peed my pants. That's not funny. That's abuse. When someone says no or stop and you continue on, that's abuse. But right now we're going to look at domestic abuse and violence, domestic violence. Domestic abuse is defined as the use of physical harm inflicted on another member of a household or family in the same family. It's usually between spouses and partners, but it doesn't have to be. Domestic violence is sometimes called spousal abuse, and it usually involves repetitive physical and psychological abuse. It's called a cycle of abuse. The main thing I wanted you to take away today is the behavior one person uses to control another person in that relationship. You can't do that. You can't control someone else. They have a right to be who they are. And please never allow someone to control you. You have a right to be who you are. So what about the types of abuse? Let's go on to that. We have emotional. These are some of the top types of abuse. This certainly isn't all the abuses, but it's some of the top types of abuse. Verbal, physical, sexual, stalking, and economical. So let's start with the emotional abuse. Emotional abuse is jealousy, bossing others, peer pressure, embarrassing others, humiliating others, and mean looks. And again, if we look at that, we've all done that in our lives. We've probably been on both ends of that, the abuser and the victim. And how about scaring others? None of those are fun. That's all abuse. What about verbal abuse? Put downs, yelling, saying shut up, rude comments, threats. I personally think verbal abuse is the worst kind of abuse because it stays with you forever. your bruises heal, your cuts scar over, your black eyes heal up, but that verbal abuse is in your head forever, and that record can click on in just a second. You can be feeling pretty high, you can be feeling pretty good about yourself, pretty strong about yourself, and somebody says something to you and it just deflates everything. We constantly have to deal with that verbal abuse throughout our life, but you can if you just address what it is. And what about name calling? Name calling is the same way. And what good do you get out of that? It's really abuse. Physical abuse, hitting, pushing, kicking, slapping, punching, using weapons, pulling, and grabbing. They're all forms of physical abuse. And they're not fun. They're not fun for either party. And why do we have to go there? Hopefully this class will help you understand you don't have to be in relationships with that in there. There are healthy relationships that don't have these things in their relationships, so you don't even have to deal with them. What about sexual abuse? These are right out of the Indiana law books. Non-consensual sexual contact. That means no. No means no. You both have to consent to it. Derogatory name calling or humiliation during sex. Refusal to use contraception. We all hopefully know what contraception is. It's like a condom, a rubber, something to protection, some type of protection. Deliberately causing unwanted physical pain during sex. Deliberately passing on sexual diseases or infections. You have to tell your partner if you have a disease or an infection. Then it's their choice if they want to take that risk. If you don't tell them, you're taking their power away, because our choice, our voice, our choices is one of the biggest powers we have in this life. And if you don't allow them to make their own choices, then you take that power away. So you have to tell them if you have a disease or an infection. You cannot use toys, objects, or any other items without both people consenting to it. If one person says no, then it's abuse. What about stalking? I have found over the years that a lot of people don't even know that stalking is an abuse. And I've been doing this for 11 years now. Willful and repeated following, watching, and or harassing of another person. You can't do that. You can't gather information about another person. They're entitled to their privacy. How about cell phone texting, constant phone calls, emailing constantly? You can't do that. If someone says, no, leave me alone, then you have to leave them alone. They are entitled to their privacy. And these are so easy to bring back into court too. You know, if something happens and you should happen to go to court, have to defend something, somebody could very easily pick that up and say, hey, look, all this she wrote, or all this he wrote, or all this he said to me, or all this she said to me, my phone text, it's hard evidence. How about sending gifts or flowers that are unwanted? When someone says, we're done, we're over, I don't want you in my life anymore, then move on. Because why would we want someone in our life that they don't want to be in our life? And I'm sure that if you let that go, you'll find somebody who is more compatible with you. How about installing software that reports keystrokes made on a victim's computer? What this is, in case you don't know, they have software out there right now that if, let's say I was in an abusive relationship and I'll be the abuser and I'm going to go out and I tell you that I don't want you messing with the computer, I don't want you talking to anybody at all. And you're like, okay. And then I leave and you get on the computer and you start texting or typing with them. When I get home, I can download that software. I not only know where you've been, but it also downloads everything that was said or printed or typed. So I know everything that went on. You can't do that. That's abuse. What about economical abuse? That's another abuse that people found, were surprised to find that it was an abuse. You cannot control all the finances or money in a relationship and deny access of that information to your partner. That's if you share everything. If you share accounts, if you share a house together, if you share your bills together, if you share all of your expenses together. That doesn't mean you're living together, but you each have your own separate lives. That means if you are together and everything is joined. Not allowing your partner to work. If somebody wants to work, they get that right to work. That's their right to work. You cannot jeopardize current employment through harassment. You can't go down to where somebody's working, where your significant other is working, and start an argument with them. Maybe you didn't finish it. I had this happen in one of my classes. A guy said, I understand because my girlfriend and I were arguing and she had to go to work, but I wasn't done stating my point of view. So I went down to her work and I started arguing with her, and her boss got upset with me. He kicked me off the premises. Yeah, it's trespassing. You can't go to someone else's employment and start arguing or harassing them. They're on a job. They're there to do the job, not to argue with you. How about jeopardizing future employment by physically abusing a partner the night before an interview or refusing transportation? You can't beat someone up the night before they go for an interview to work. And it happens all the time. Sadly, it happens all the time. or you cannot deny transportation to someone if you've told them that you're going to take them to a job interview. If I'm dating someone, if I'm dating you and I'm like, oh, I'm so excited, I got a job, will you take me next week? And you're like, sure. Then we get into an argument or we get into a fight and you're like, you're on your own. No, you have to be man enough or you have to be woman enough to say, if you need a ride, I will still take you. You don't have to talk to me, but you still have to abide by that promise that you made. You also cannot take partners' money without their permission. You cannot be forced to be the main income provider in the house. You also cannot challenge your partner's purchases. That doesn't mean just saying, hey, what did you buy? That means an interrogation. What's going on? What's happening? What did you buy? Where did you go? How come you spent that much? Almost like an interrogation type thing. You can't do that. I know I used to work with somebody that recorded every single penny that they spent. And I thought that she was pretty frugal. And so one day she went to the vending machine and she bought a pack of gum. And she came right back to her desk and sat down and wrote down that pack of gum. And I said, wow, you're really frugal. You're have very good handle on what you spend. She said, no, it's not me. She said, my husband gives me so much money every morning and every evening I have to account for every penny. That's abuse. So who abuses? Well, in this country, there is no ethnic or socioeconomic group as the main source of domestic violence. It affects people of African, European, Hispanic, Native American, or Asian origin. It doesn't matter whether you're rich, you're poor, college graduate, high school dropouts. It does not matter. It is across the board. It is totally across the board. Anyone can abuse. Anyone can be violent. I have some statistics for you that I just want to share with you that I think is pretty interesting. Every 15 seconds, a woman is beaten by her husband or boyfriend in the USA. 30% of all female homicide victims are killed by a partner or former partner. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men experience severe intimate partner physical violence, intimate partner contact sexual violence, and or intimate partner stalking with impacts such as injury, fearfulness, post-traumatic stress disorder, the use of victim services, and a contraction of sexually transmitted disease. And children, unfortunately, are present during 90% of the domestic assaults against one of their parents. 90% of the time, kids are seeing their mom get beat up or their dad get beat up. Again, it's a top behavior. That just teaches them this is the way to address your problems. This is the way that we handle things. 3 women are murdered by their husbands or boyfriend in this country every day. What about a young boy? What about a young boy, 7 to 14 years old, and he sees his mom getting beat up, and he tries to help mom, and then he gets hurt, and he has to go to the hospital. So he's going to be mom's hero. He wants to be mom's hero. He comes in to help mom, and then he ends up getting hurt. He has another whammy, another hit, another horrible setback that he takes. And many, many times, not always, but many times. And that's from the mom. Mom will turn on him. What did you do that for? You just ruined everything. What is wrong with you? Get out of here. You're so stupid. I can't believe you did that. Wow. What does a 14-year-old boy do with that? He buries it. He buries it right along with everything else he doesn't know how to process. He was trying to help mom. He wanted to be her hero, and she turned on him. So it's buried deep down within him. And hopefully one day he'll be able to address it without violence, without anger. So we have to remember that. 63% of young men between the ages of 11 and 20 who are serving time for homicide have killed their mother's abusers. 63%. That's alarming. To me, that's so sad. 1/3 of all teens experience some level of abuse in their dating relationship. They live what they're taught. Children live what they're taught. Many people who batter do not drink heavily, and many alcoholics do not beat their partners. Abusers who do drink, they don't necessarily give up abusing when they give up drinking. The alcohol only acts as an excuse for the drunk. And I have some questions for you, questions for thought. Just think about these for a minute. Did you have yelling or hitting when you were growing up? Who lived in your home? Were you ever afraid of your parents or anyone that was living in your home when you were growing up? When you were young, did anyone ever hit you, yell at you, say things to make you feel stupid or unimportant? If you answered yes to any of those, you probably grew up with some abuse in the home. So this concludes session 1. But we're going to give you some writing prompts to help you unearth some of your past so that you can get started on your beautiful journey. Also, I want to point out too that these are excerpts from our full class out of our workbook. We have a beautiful workbook that you would get free if you took the full class. So hopefully you'll sign up and take the full class with us. So the writing prompts are, how do you find yourself today? At what age did you learn abuse? And who taught you abuse? But I'd like for you to write about a time that you may have inflicted abuse or you were abused. And during that time, what do you remember? What did you feel? And what were your motives? I'm just giving you a minute to look at all that's up there. I've enjoyed sharing this time with you. And please always, always remember, be kind to yourself. Sometimes I think we are our own worst abusers. Thank you and have a beautiful day. See you next time.